Welcome to the Biohacking Superhuman Performance Podcast. My name is Natalie Nidham. I'm a nutritionist, a human potential and epigenetic coach, and I created this podcast to bring you the latest ways to take control of your health and longevity. We cover it all, from new technology to ancestral health practices, personalized interventions, and a very special interest of mine, peptides. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the episode on the new, greatest, hottest wearable that's recently re-hit the market, because it's not brand new. This is actually the next evolution of a wearable that existed before. What are you wearing on your hand, on your wrist, or anywhere on your body that is currently measuring what's happening inside your body? Are you wearing anything? If you're a biohacker, like many of the people who listen to this podcast, you probably are. You're probably wearing something like an Oura ring or some kind of a wristband, something that is telling you through an app what's going on under the hood, as it were. Alternatively, you might not be a biohacker, but you might be wearing a smartwatch. You might be wearing an Apple Watch, or frankly, even a Fitbit, or Fitbit's also a wearable. I guess I shouldn't put it in the category of the Apple Watch, but all of these different devices have different capacities and capabilities. And the device I'm going to talk about today is the Biostrap EVO. It's the next evolution of the Biostrap, and it has come back bigger, badder, and better than ever. And in my interview today with Elias Arjan, we talk all about it, what it can do, and what makes it different than the other devices on the market. So a little bit about my guest today. Elias Arjan is the Senior Vice President of Biostrap, and he has an incredibly varied background, both in human kinetics and athletics, as a speaker, an actor, and a consummate biohacker himself, with a real passion for specifically evidence-based biohacking. And so this is the guy that's not doing 10 things at once, throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that something sticks. Evidence-based biohacking is that segment of biohackers that are really, they're very specific. They're really looking for answers. So they're asking questions all the time. And this is why, well, it's I'm sure one of the many reasons why Elias and Biostrap are such a good match. Because the Biostrap, one of the reasons that makes it very different from most of the other devices on the market is that the data that it's delivering to do is actually clinical grade. So this is data that is meant for clinicians, researchers, people who need lots and lots of depth to the data that they get, so that they can conclude from that information. And so there aren't that many devices that give you that quality of information. And today we're going to talk about how this affects how the Biostrap works, what the type of data is that you get, and some of the ways that you can use it. If you decide that you absolutely must get your hands on this new device, they were recently out of stock. They're now back in stock and shipping. You can get 10% off by using the promo code longevity10 at biostrap.com. And you'll notice that there's the wristband, there's an external heart rate monitor, and there's also a shoe pod. We talk a little bit about why there are these three devices and why they chose not to try and shove all that technology into one place. If you get value from this episode, of course, and as always, please do feel free to share it to your networks, share it to your friends, your family, anybody that you think would also get value from the episode. And of course, if you have any comments or questions, you can reach out to me directly through my website, which is natnidham.com, or you can come join me and we can chat on my Facebook group, which is called Biohacking Superhuman Performance, exact same name as this podcast. The group's on Facebook and it's also on MeWe. Now, MeWe, I will tell you, is not quite as active as Facebook these days because I'm too busy with the Facebook group, but I have it there as a placeholder, as a shadow group, just in case anything should happen to that infamous Facebook group. Anyway, we have lots of fun in there, lots of great conversation. So enjoy the episode. I'm so glad that you're here. I really appreciate you guys. And I've been hearing more and more from people over the last little while. And I just want you to know that every comment and question and bit of feedback that I get on the show is really valuable. So thank you so much, you guys, for being here. And I look forward to hearing from you. Enjoy the episode. Welcome, Elias Arjan, to the show. It is so great to see you again.
Great to be here, Natalie. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm excited to see what happens here.
Yeah, you and me both. So we are gathered here today because Elias and I have been talking about Biostrap. I've had the luxury and the gift of using a Biostrap now for a little over a month, and which has been amazing. I've loved it, and I'm about to launch into using Biostrap in my practice with my clients. So we're gonna talk a little bit about Elias's story. We're gonna talk a bit about the Biostrap story. So Elias, why don't you tell us how you got to being the VP of Biostrap today, and because you've got this great vision for the company and the wearable and how it's going to interface. So let's get some background on you first.
Yeah, I guess to go all the way back, as a teenager, I was that, sort of fat, slow kid in gym class, who couldn't keep up with the other kids. And yeah, and so so I kind of got fed up when I was around 18, 19, actually around 18. And I started to really get into fitness and health and working out. And when I went to college, I actually was in business, but I took an elective in biology, and then I changed my major to human kinetics and performance, like exercise physiology, because I was just fascinated by the field. Became a personal trainer, started doing triathlons, and started taking on clients. And although I was I was only like 21, 22, a lot of my clients were people in their 30s and 40s even that I was coaching. And I really dove deep. I really wanted to understand, what are the ways to sort of optimize performance? What's the best diet? How do I increase my racing times? All of these things. And what happened was I didn't end up pursuing athletics full time in my entire life, although I stayed active. But it started me on this path where I was always trying to find what is sort of the latest thing that's happening in, optimizing performance. So even though I didn't remain a personal trainer, I still kept testing myself, and people would know this. Even my friends would be like, hey, I heard this new fad diet, everyone's talking about Atkins. Is it any good? And so everybody knew I was sort of the go-to guy. And then sort of fast forward to, a couple of years ago, I moved to Los Angeles, and I was sort of, I'd been spending a lot of my life traveling. And so I was sort of stabilizing, and I was looking for a community to connect with. And I really, sort of centered around biohacking. I just felt like these are the people that I connect with. This is sort of the mindset of how I've always lived my life. I always say I was a biohacker before, people were using that term. I was always trying to optimize my performance and seeking the, sort of the latest and greatest thing. And so I was fortunate to take over the organizing of Biohackers Los Angeles. And so we were organizing events, a couple times a month. And one of the events we had was around HRV. And so we had the people from Apollo Neuro, who now maybe a lot of people know the Apollo device. At the time, they had not even launched it yet. They were just sort of, it was still the concept that they had developed, and they were getting ready to launch. So they shared their vision with us. And then we also had Samir, who's the CEO of Biostrap, come to the same event. And so when I met both companies, I was very impressed with what they were doing with HRV. But Biostrap to me was always, it's kind of ended up being the device I was always looking for, because I was always looking to find some qualitative data to validate my own biohacking and the biohacking of my friends, clients, associates, what have you. Because it always frustrated me that the best we had was like, hey, does that supplement work? And I go, I think so.
That's the classic.
And it's like, well, how do you think so? Well, I don't know. I think I feel a little bit better. And that was the best we had. I was like, this seems kind of pathetic, that we can't, so I'm spending $400 a month on supplements. And which ones work? I don't know. I have no clue.
Yeah.
And so, when I saw the Biostrap technology, I was like, oh, this is what we're looking for. I can just conduct my own N=1 experimentation. But the problem I found was that the device itself was essentially, kind of a research device. Mm-hmm. And so the average user doesn't know how to use this thing to conduct their own N=1. So they kind of need a coach, or they need some training, or they need to be like a prosumer, like a biohacker already. So, we've been working over the last year to sort of kind of address all of those. But the reality is that it's still a new field, this field of using wearable technology to validate your own N=1. And it's still new. I'm actually part of designing trainings now for, lots of people around this within Biostrap, with other partners. I just started doing a training for one of the largest fitness professional certification agencies in the world around wearable technology. So people are starting to take notice that, we should be using this, and I believe the future is, everyone being able to conduct their own N=1. And I do believe that we're not going to be able to use AI. I think at this stage, maybe 10 years from now, AI can do it. But right now, what most people need is a coach who understands biometric data, understands human neurophysiology, and understands how to coach an individual to get to their highest level of performance, or in some cases, even to overcome disease states, right? Because not everybody who comes to biohacking is, looking to get the edge. A lot of people are just looking to no longer be sick and tired. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and that's so true. I think that you're right. There's two main groups in the biohacking world, and one of them is looking for that superhuman edge kind of thing, but the other one they're disillusioned, right? They've been let down by conventional medicine, by the conventional medicine model. Sometimes they've been told, well, there's nothing we can do. You're just going to have to live with whatever it is that they're living with. And they're the people who are sitting up and going, no, I'm not buying it, and they're taking their health into their hands. And these are, whether they define themselves as biohackers or not, these are the people that are really going at it. And I in this large community that I run on Facebook, one of the last holdouts on Facebook, I guess, right. Just because that's where it lives, and it's too big to walk away from. I'm always amazed and frankly inspired by some of these people that come into these groups that are so broken and so sick, and what they've been able to accomplish themselves just by taking control back, and sometimes hiring a coach or going to other functional medicine doctors. But to your point, one of the big missing links, and there's a lot of confusion around wearable technologies right now because there's an increasing number of players coming into the market, and it's hard for people to kind of tease out who's giving me valid information. And it's, to me, it's one of the big, that's why I was so excited about this interview, because it's one of the big nuts we have to crack, even as a coach, for me, trying to understand how to direct my clients to which wearable. And I've had one that I've used for a number of years, and for certain things, it's quite good. But I would say that the depth of information I'm getting from the Biostrap right now is a very different equation.
Yeah, it really is sort of the N=1 device. It really is. It's the ultimate N=1 device. So if that's what someone's willing to that what you're looking for, I have not seen a better device that outside the only other ones that are similar in terms of their, because the history of Biostrap goes back to clinical research. So It was designed to be for clinicians and doctors, whereas most of the consumer devices are not. They're designed to, if you think about it, most of the devices people are using today are smartwatches that have thrown in health metrics.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's great. Biostrap isn't trying to be there. We're not a text. We're not, a GPS. We're not a, you don't take calls through the Biostrap. Like, it's a health monitor. Mm-hmm. So, and there are a couple other devices doing that, but even then, and we can name names if you want, and I actually take the opinion, even though there may be quote unquote competitors, that they're all complementary in their own ways, and there's reasons why. There's reasons why. If I'm going around, if I'm an adventure athlete, I probably want a Garmin for my GPS, for my hiking, for my racing, for all of that stuff. And so I might wear my Garmin, for those activities, but then I use my Biostrap for nocturnal metrics, because the big gap is that people don't realize that. They don't even actually realize how wearables interact with human neurophysiology. And it's not their fault. No one's making this information clear. But the science is rather clear at this stage that during the day, taking randomized measurements or snapshots throughout the day. So a lot of people think like, oh, my Apple Watch told me my heart rate was, 87 beats a minute.
Okay.
When? So Well, what was going on? Were you in traffic? Were you running? Were you, sleeping? Were you taking a nap? Were you, so all of those, so it's context. So biometrics need to be put in their context. And then you have what's called a lot of like the confounds, right? So you have a lot of different reasons why your biometrics may be changing. And then when you get to one of the core biometrics that is ultimately probably the most important one to monitor, heart rate variability, you open up a quagmire of parameters that become extremely complex to understand in terms of context, individual baselines, potential reasons why HRV could be one way or the other. So, and then you need to kind of also essentially be almost surgical in terms of your approach. And that's the other thing, actually, to call out the biohacking community. The biohacking community, a lot of people have this sort of spray and pray approach to biohacking. Yeah. Like, I'm going to start 20 interventions at the same time because I have a problem or I want to do X. And again, that's not how you validate N equals 1, in my opinion, right? Like, I think of it like from a research approach, right? So I have to look at one parameter. I have to get my baseline, So you get your baseline with Biostrap. We don't even actually report your metrics for 5 days, right? I mean, you experienced that.
Yeah, no, I noticed that.
That's because we are trying to compare you to you. We're not comparing you to the normative population, because when it comes to some of these metrics, there isn't necessarily a normative population, right? Are you comparing yourself to endurance athletes for your resting heart rate? Are you comparing yourself to people who have, obese people who have extremely high resting heart rate because their hearts are working so hard? What population are you comparing yourself to? So let's not even worry about that. Let's compare you to you, right? So let's get your baseline. Let's understand what your current baseline is, because again, like you said, some people are coming in, they're high performers, right? So their baseline is going to be, they're looking to just sort of get that last little 10%. And then some people will be coming in who have, they're obese, they have sleep apnea, they have, 3 or 4 chronic conditions. Sadly, that is becoming increasingly common. I think now 60% of the American population has some chronic condition. I think you probably know this. It's quoted in the biohacking community all the time, but 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. That goes back to 2016. So I would guess after COVID, we're probably over 90%. Yeah, it's probably over 90%. So that means we literally only have 10% of the population, and I think it's similar. I know you're in Canada, it's probably similar in North America. Only 10% of the population is metabolically healthy. I mean, that is an astounding thing to say to me. It's huge. It's huge. Because it doesn't mean that these people are actually currently experiencing severe sickness or illness, but they're metabolically not optimized to even realize how much better they could feel.
Well, and they're building disease without realizing it. So this is the thing, right? People wake up and say, "Oh, I just got type 2 diabetes." Well, you don't catch type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes builds over decades. It's decades of, and this is where this whole N of 1 becomes important, because even when you're running labs, the labs themselves are using data from all the other people that came in over the last, let's say, 12 months to compare you against. So based on what you just said, people are essentially being compared against a sick population. So the bar, which is essentially de facto creating a bar that's pretty low, right? So
yeah, it's actually abysmally low, in my opinion, if you think about what the human body's designed to do. Yeah. I mean, the human body is the most amazing thing. I mean, if you ever spend any time, and I'm sure even if you don't, go and get a degree in biology or biosciences, I mean, if you just spend any time realizing that right now, as I'm speaking to you, right, my autonomic nervous system is regulating my breathing, my heart rate, I have multiple enzymatic reactions going on in my liver and my kidneys, my cells are, essentially dying and then recreating themselves and replicating and respirating, and like, if you just look at what's going on, I mean, you are a living, walking miracle of life. And the fact that is even possible, like the fact that we even exist, actually, if you actually realize how much has to go right,
absolutely.
If you study, I mean, there's the big picture of that. There's the macro, which is like, how does the universe even get here? Which, we don't need to go down that philosophical path. But if we just stick to biological, the fact that we even walk around and talk is just an absolute miracle of life. That all of these cells, these trillions of cells have come together in this, skin, in this carbon-based life form and sort of created this being. And I have consciousness, which we don't even know how that even works.
Yeah.
Where, and you look at all of that, and you think, we are all amazing. And it's amazing that we also have control over that.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that is the most incredible thing to me. And that's why I love the biohacking community, because the biohacking community is all around, at least to some degree, recognition that I have some control over this.
Mm-hmm.
Can't control the world, especially 2020 taught us I can't control anything, right? There's nothing I'm in control of. I can't control the world. I can't control politics. I can't control what other people do. I can't control what happens in other parts of the world. The only thing I can potentially control is certain things about my neurophysiology and my consciousness. And that's all I got. So it seems like a good time to focus on that.
Seems to me. Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about Biostrap. Let's talk about this, because Biostrap has evolved. You just came out with a new version of the Biostrap. There's definitely some idiosyncrasies about this device that I think it's important for people to understand. That when we first met, you explained to me, and you just I was like, oh, wow, that's so cool. That, and it's funny because I've heard the complaints from people that, oh my God, it takes so long to get my information. I mean, this being a symptom of this immediate gratification society we live in, right?
Yeah. Well, we're in a dopamine driven society right now, right? So people don't know how to have enough patience to, that's why mindfulness practices are so popular, right? Because it's like, can you slow your brain down for 4 minutes,
Just for a minute. Yeah. Well, and I mean, my Biostrap has now become my meditation partner, which is really interesting to me. But it's funny, right? Because I'd been meditating for a while, then I fell out of it. And then I woke up one morning and said, you know what, dude, it's time to get back to it. And I'm like, oh, there's this funky meditation function on my Biostrap. I think I'll check it out. And it's just enough for me. It's just enough to keep me accountable every day, because I'm a stupid competitive person. And I'm like, well, every single day that meditation has to happen, because otherwise I don't get an activity.
Yeah. There's I forget what it is, but it's actually designed into a lot of the tech, the thing about streaks.
Yeah.
That people want to keep a streak. So it's like you have to, there's a lot of apps that gamify that you have to log in every day and do X, Y, and Z. And if you miss it, so people go crazy for this. And they go for like 4 years. And it's like, if they miss a day, like they'll be like, I don't know, in hospital bed screaming, like, I got to do my thing, because I'm going to break my streak. So I hear what you're saying. So yeah, there's a meditation option in Biostrap, which allows you to sort of do what we call an active, biometric recording. So you can record that. You can get, like, if you have the Meditation Plus, you can get the sound and the Zen score.
I did that.
Yeah, and all of that stuff. So, and that's kind of, that's a little bit of a gamification there of the meditation. But it also, again, it adds that sort of quantified data. You can see, here was my heart rate. Here is my respiration rate, is usually quite high, actually, before you start meditation. Then you're always quite surprised, my HRV level. And you can see, oh, look, I kind of zenned out a little bit, by just doing that meditation. Mm-hmm. And it just gives you that. And that's the whole thing. People do meditation, say, oh, I think I feel better. But then this gives you now the quantitative, objective proof that, oh, my biometrics change.
Exactly.
And that is the magic of what we're talking about here, of what's possible. Because what it also shows, and there's a lot of research on this as well, that when people get that objective, outside of themselves feedback, they tend to be more motivated to change behavior.
Absolutely. And I see it all the time with my clients. I find it gives them control back, because it really drives home that message that what you do has an impact on how you feel and what your outcome is. And so we've become so disconnected from that we think we can just go around doing anything we want. And because, going back to the miracle of the human body, even people who consider themselves or who might be considered to be broken, they're still a freaking miracle.
Right.
They're still walking and talking and breathing. Like, there's still a million things going on simultaneously in synergy.
And it's amazing how some of the stories you see of how people can turn that around too, right? So people
Absolutely.
can come back from the brink and really recover. And that's part of that miracle. And you know, it also shows that you have that opportunity, you know, any stage of life too. I mean, you sometimes even hear, but I mean, it's not always easy. You got to be able to change your behavior. And so you got to find ways to sort of celebrate. And this is the thing I know about behavioral change. You got to celebrate the small wins. And a lot of times you're not going to change your scale weight. You're not going to see your waist circumference change, but your biometrics can change in a day. Your biometrics can change in a moment. So it's a really good way to get positive reinforcement very, very quickly. Like you said, one meditation session, oh, look, my HRV went up 20%.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Biostrap. Let's talk about the new EVO.
Sure.
This is a new model. You kind of took the old Biostrap away. I know there were lots of issues with battery life or whatever. Now you've come back with the new and improved and reconnecting to its origins, to what Biostrap was really about originally, which was as a research tool, like a lab tool. And so there's the Biostrap labs. So why don't we talk a little bit about what's different and what's new about this Biostrap?
I think the biggest challenge for Biostrap with the previous device was, you know, like you mentioned, the idiosyncrasies. Some of those are from the very nature of how Biostrap does things, but some of them were also, you know, some of the limitations of the previous device itself, just like the speed of Bluetooth syncing, connectivity with phones. You know, a lot of people I don't want to get into all the technical elements, but like a lot of times phones have, basically they try to conserve energy, so they turn off a lot of things that are happening. So you could be syncing your data, and your phone decides, not the Biostrap, but your phone decides to turn that off, right? Because the phone's saying, oh, this app is using, and depending on what your settings are on your phone, you could have set it to optimize performance, thinking you're doing the right thing. But then what will happen is your phone will say, oh, look, this app is consuming energy because the Biostrap's trying to send data. And to your point around that, Biostrap gathers high fidelity data and processes it with cloud computing. So that system is very different than other wearables. So, you know, to get a little technical here, you know, most wearables, whether they be, you know, whatever you are, your Fitbits, your, you know, Apple Watch, whatever, they may have designed a lot of the processing to happen on the device or on the phone to get you metrics very quickly, right? Because again, that dopamine-driven society, people just want to know. I just want my metrics immediately. And that's great. I mean, that's absolutely perfect for a consumer device. That's what consumers want. The consumer is always right, right?
Amen.
But in research, our consumers are clinicians. So in research, our consumers want high fidelity data that is clinically accurate, that can be analyzed, right? So what Biostrap does is it gathers the data from the biometrics through the sensor on your wrist, holds it on the memory of the device, transfers it to your phone, right? So you have to get that information from the Biostrap to the phone through your app. Then your app sends it to our cloud processing servers. That extra step is huge in terms of a couple different things. One, the clinical accuracy of the data, because on the cloud servers, it can then analyze the biometric data and compare it to a variety of parameters to ensure that the data is accurate. So if it doesn't have, we have like a confidence engine, so high or low confidence. And so if it has essentially the belief that this data has low confidence, it will actually discard that metric.
Interesting.
So you may occasionally see when you have like your HRV readings, you'll see point by point, which again is something you don't see on any other device. You know, they'll give you an average that they do. So what they do is they throw out all of that data and they kind of just simplify it into some type of average, right? To give you an HRV metric or to give you your average heart rate, which again is great. All I want to know is, is what's my average. But if I'm a clinician, I want to know, give me the 200 readings that happened or whatever over the night. Every single HRV reading, every single respiration rate, heart rate, SpO2 reading throughout the entire night at every exact timestamp. That's what clinicians want. That's what Biostrap gives you. But all of that requires that cloud processing, cloud server, confidence data. So it's that's also consumes a lot of battery life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of devices are doing the sleep tracking, just based on actigraphy data, which is, a very low battery consumptive process. And so you can get data, and actually actigraphy is pretty good for sleep. But the bottom line is that we're trying to capture all of these data points, and we're trying to report all of those back. And for people who actually use our Clinicians program, they even have the ability to download that raw data and even run their own algorithms on it.
Wow.
So we have right now, we just announced it, actually ended up getting picked up by the press a lot more than we expected. Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and I was there a little over a year ago when the research team from Children's Hospital LA brought us in USC School of Medicine. And they said, we independently went and tested every wearable on the market in our lab, compared it to our lab equipment, and basically realized that Biostrap was the only device we could use, because we actually need to download the data and run our own algorithm, because they have found their own novel biomarker. And I was so blown away by what they're doing. They've been working on this for 4 years. And if it's specifically working on it for sickle cell, which, is a pretty nasty disease, actually, only disproportionately affects, it's a genetic disorder, affects a very specific group, most people predominantly from Africa.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pain associated with that. So they found a pain marker that if their hypothesis is correct, and I believe it is, they may have found a pain marker that's more indicative of pain than even HRV is.
Really?
And it's completely new. Like, it doesn't exist yet. There's not. I think they have some type of a name for it, but they're using Biostrap to validate this, and see if they can validate this biomarker. And essentially, if they can, we might actually have a new biomarker that we can be using to manage pain in a couple of years.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Okay.
So, but that explains, that's an example, though, that those researchers literally couldn't use another device, because they need to have that raw data that's captured and then run their own proprietary algorithm, because they're trying to.
Right. So that's about the quality of the data and the depth of data that you're delivering back from the device. So, which is, frankly, quite astounding that, me as a consumer could be wearing something for a pretty affordable price. That is medical grade information, right? That's pretty amazing.
We have to say clinical grade, because medical means like FDA, which we're looking at, we're working on in 2021, but currently we don't have that FDA clearance.
Okay. So clinical grade.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But so let's talk a little bit about why. How does it do? Like, is it the sense? Like, what's different about the Biostrap that is from my Fitbit? Because I have this conversation with people. A lot of people have an Apple Watch. A lot of people have a Fitbit. Nobody wants to tell someone, just go out and get another device because yours sucks. They're, as you said, they're different. They're built for different things. But if we're going to use it for this thing, then we're going to want something that's at least going to give us good enough data that it makes sense to act on it. So how is it, I think it's the sensors. It has to do with the sensors.
The sensor is part of it. So yeah, the cloud processing that we talked about. So recording of the high fidelity data, and then the cloud processing, that's one piece. The other piece is the type of sensor that we're using. So we're using IR and red and infrared sensor. Mm-hmm. Anybody who knows biohacking knows that red light is good for you, right? Blue light is like, our enemy in the biohacking world.
Really.
Except for, not the enemy, the enemy at night.
Yes, it's the enemy of sleep.
Or something you want to minimize at night. The enemy of sleep at nighttime. So again, that's an interesting point. Like, have you thought about, is your wearable shining, a green spectrum of light into your arm while you're sleeping? And it's probably not, negligible impact, but Biostrap isn't doing that. We're using red light, which is a healing form of light while you're sleeping. And Biostrap is extremely good at sleep because it uses red light. And so the body, so the way wearable sensors actually work, or PPG-based sensors, photoplasmography is the technique that we're using, which is a very well-validated technique and used in medical devices for a long time. Most people are familiar with the fingertip pulse oximeters. that they get at the hospital, right? Those are, they clip those on your finger, and that's a pulse ox. That's sort of using that same sort of red light technology. And so we shine that sensor, the PPG sensor, into your wrist. And what happens is that the body reflects, and different tissues reflect light at different capacities. So the sensor shines the light in and then records the light, that's being reflected back. And that's how you get your PPG data. And by using the red light, you can shine much deeper into the tissues. So most of the devices that are using green light is less expensive, more mass produced. A lot of them are coming from the same factories, just like anything else when you want to mass produce a product.
Yeah.
And so you get that green light data, and it's fast, it's easy, and it's really good for active movement. So if you're running, like we have a heart rate monitor that we use as an external device to get when you're running, and that's a green light sensor. So green light isn't bad. It's much better at what it's better at. Red light is much better for nocturnal metrics and for high fidelity data. So but the trade-off is red light is sensitive to light and movement. So if you're moving around during the day under bright lights with your Biostrap on, you're not going to get as many daytime readings because you need to be relatively still. So it's great for nocturnal, it's great for meditation, it's great for what we call spot biometric readings, because you have to remain relatively still. And ideally the Biostrap might, even if you're under bright lights, you might even want to have it covered to get a good reading.
Interesting.
So the green light doesn't have those confounds. So I can be running with my green light armband attached to the Biostrap app in the bright sunshine, and I'm still going to get my run recorded and all my heart rate and HRV.
I see. Okay.
So it's more of the red light, green light aspect. And here's the unspoken element between red light, green light that almost nobody knows. And is that green light, because it doesn't shine as far into the tissue. So it's basically taking it, subdermally just from the skin. So you're shining that light through the skin, and green light doesn't penetrate as deep. But guess what? If the skin is extremely dark, there's lots of hair, freckles, tattoos, low oxygen perfusion, that green light is actually not going to get good data.
Huh.
So, and again, this is people go look. I think there's a Medium article that was written is your fitness tracker racist? Because people who were extremely dark skinned were not getting accurate readings. They noticed that they were like, these can't be right, the readings that they're getting. And so that is one of the confounds. Now, that's going to be a confound for athletics for sure, for using a green light PPG sensor, but nocturnally, the red light is definitely superior there. And that's why actually you see even some of the companies now are adding red light to their green light based products as of this year. Like literally over the last few months, I noticed like Apple added, and you couldn't get SpO2 readings from the green light. So they need the red light for that. So they added SpO2 to the Apple Watch. So now you see Apple Watch has a red light sensor for that.
Interesting. And so SpO2, for people who may not know, is the oxygen saturation of your blood, basically.
Yes. Yeah. Blood oxygen saturation. Yeah.
So, which is an interesting metric for people, especially at night, because it can probably give you an indication of, do I need to be working on my mouth breather, sleep apnea, like all of these not that it's not good enough to, what's the word I'm looking for, to diagnose dysfunction, but it might be able to give you an indication that this is something you need to dig into a little bit deeper.
It could be for some people have used it as like a pre-screening tool to see if they need if they need a full sleep lab. Yeah, full sleep study done, right? Because it's like kind of like a good, we've even looked into that, as a company, like we're actually, I wouldn't say we are the sleep lab. We do have a product called Sleep Lab that does use your microphone to quantify your snoring. And does go a little bit deeper. And then one of the other things, actually, because of that red light, because we're shining it so deep, the green light is taking the measurement at the level of your capillaries. Mm-hmm. We're going all the way to the arterioles and arteries. So we can actually get arterial metrics that you can't get from other devices. So part of what is interesting is there's a lot of heart health data that we can get, like your arterial age relative, which is also something that changes quite a bit. So there's a lot of these arterial metrics that we can get. And then, so that's like another program that we have is like the heart health. And then the sleep lab, if people want the really detailed data on their sleep, their movement, snoring through the microphone, and all of that. So it's a really good kind of way to validate, do I have? But again, you probably want to go do a sleep study if you think you have, if you see, especially if you see your SpO2 dropping below 95%.
Interesting. So would that be the average or is that the minimum? Because I'll get an SpO2 like as low as 92 maybe, but my average is 98 and
it's more if you would see like a sustained drop, right?
Right.
So it's like if you see a sustained drop, so if you see like you're dropping below, I mean, I forget what it was, but like some people, some people when you have severe sleep apnea, but a lot of times they don't even realize it, which is amazing to me because your SpO2 can drop like, if your SpO2 drops below 90%, you got a problem, right? It should be between 95 and 99 all the time, even 100. Mm-hmm. And what's always interesting is when you go and you put that pulse ox at the doctor's office, you're almost always 98, 99, 100. So people say, well, I don't believe I was 95 in my sleep because when I put on my pulse ox, when I'm awake, it's always 98, 99, 100. Well, yeah, you're awake. When you're sleeping, there's a lot of things that could confound your SpO2 numbers, But if they drop really low, then it's a sign of concern. And I think the reason it became so popular last year, because we were the only ones doing SpO2, is because of COVID, because it became a very important COVID metric. Because a lot of these people, when they were admitted to hospital, their SpO2 levels were just incredibly, that's why they grabbed them and ventilated them, right? Because it's like, oh my God, your SpO2 is so low, ventilate, and they were just literally bringing people in. And if they had a wearable like Biostrap, they would have probably seen their SpO2 drop, even 24 or 48 hours before they actually needed to go to the hospital. Right. So we were involved in some COVID studies where we've been sort of analyzing, our chief science officer could speak more to that, because he was leading those studies, but talking about, when would you see those metrics drop to be able to be predictive of them having COVID before they showed other symptoms?
That's amazing. That in and of itself is a game changer. I'm just looking at my, of course, you're talking and I'm like, well, what's my SpO2?
Yeah.
Do I need to be worried? I'm not.
Well, that's. Can we just talk about that real second? I just want to mention, that is one thing I think biohackers need to watch out for, right? Is that, what's that called? Orthorexia. Is that what it's called?
Well, it specifically relates to diet, but yes, but it's this. When I started tracking my sleep way back with my Oura Ring, there was a period of time where I was anxious. Like I was worried about my sleep all the time. And I had to coach myself out of it and take a step back and go, dude, chill out a bit. This is just information. That's all it is.
So again, just to call out Oura, they also use red light. So, and they're doing it on the ring, on the finger. So I think, again, they're great company, great product for sleep. Some people just don't like the ring form factor. Maybe want data a little bit differently. Biostrap does that, but again, I would say that's and they have clinical validity. They've done a lot of the research on their metrics. They're also using that red light and they're putting it on the finger, so they're getting kind of a very enclosed data point to pull that good data from. So, but I just want to bring that up because one of the things that I've seen on the forums, the biohacking forums, all the time that I always feel like I have to speak to is people say my XYZ device, and it can be Biostrap or whatever, Fitbit, whatever it is saying that I'm only getting 10% REM sleep. I looked it up. I need to be getting more, and they're panicking.
Yeah, they're desperate.
And I always feel like I have to. I'm really kind of anti-social media right now for my own self. I'm not going on it very much, just because I'm trying to manage my mental health and not be online as much. But when I see those posts, I feel like I have to comment because I just want people to know that REM is basically impossible to perfectly quantify without an EEG sensor.
Right, which is why you don't report on REM with Biostrap. I'm guessing.
Exactly. We don't even report it. We do have an algorithm to report REM based on the combination of actigraphy and PPG. But, it's a very difficult, would rather not report a metric than report it wrong. And so I just think there's a lot of people, because they got to understand they're getting the best guess. Now, I'm not saying that the people who write algorithms for Fitbit and Apple Watch aren't good at their jobs, but they are going to do their best guess. Mm-hmm. And so you should not be freaking out if you're getting a low RAM score and saying, I need to start supplementing and doing nootropics and doing I need to go see a brain scientist and start freaking out. Like, if you really think that, because RAM has a very specific purpose. Mm-hmm. So there'd be reasons. Other things are, if you weren't getting enough REM state, you'd probably be going a little kooky.
Yeah, because it affects your brain more than anything. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you should be looking for those other signs, not just depending on your wearable for that particular metric. Now, there is a device out there that's FDA cleared for brain metrics during sleep. So if you're really that concerned, you can get that device.
Okay. So we don't have a lot of time left, but I'm looking at my sleep metrics right now, and it's telling me that I got 4 hours and 43 minutes of deep sleep, which is very different than the deep sleep metric I get from Oura. And it seems to me that what's being categorized as deep sleep may encompass what other devices might split out into REM and deep. Is that possible?
Yeah, that is possible. Yeah, that is possible. So it's breaking it up. Yeah.
Okay, because that's what I feel like that it's, instead of breaking it out into deep and REM, I'm getting one. Basically, you'd spent 3 hours in light, and you got about 4 hours and 43 minutes in a deeper state of sleep. And beyond that, the Biostrap is saying, look, more granular than that, we don't have that right now. That's
and I would like to see us, or our science team is working on the RAM. We're right now doing some research to sort of quantify that, and we're hoping to start reporting that very soon.
Okay. That's fantastic. So what else do you want people to walk away with on Biostrap today? Like, I think...
I mean, I guess maybe, based on your experience, like you said, there's maybe, what are some of the other idiosyncrasies that you think maybe need to be clarified for people, or maybe that might be confusing?
Yeah, I think for the most part, to me, it's important for people to understand that the way that the data is being collected and then processed, it's fascinating to me that my phone is harvesting information from the device every morning, and I get a little message and it says, it's taking us this long. We're syncing the data to the phone, and then the next screen is, oh no, we don't have your metrics yet. We're now sending it off to the cloud.
Right.
We're tumbling the numbers, and then it's gonna come back. And at first I was like, oh well, I don't want to wait, and then I was like, well, really, get over yourself. Go brush your teeth. It's all good.
But that's actually the use case. We just tell people, it's like in the morning, you take off your Biostrap, open your phone or whatever, and then go do your morning meditation, brush your teeth, go look at the sun and do some grounding.
Get off the damn screen.
Get away from your computer. That's what I do, right? As I go, I open up my device, I open my Biostrap, open the app, and then I walk away. I go out, and I do some grounding, I do some sun gazing, I do some breathing exercises. I come back and I have my score. So was that so difficult, right?
No.
But then also, too, I think maybe the main thing that people who haven't used the device might not know is we actually have something called a recovery score. So right at the top of the device, you have your activity, your recovery, your sleep score. And so the thing that I think is really interesting is that, and you mentioned this, all these devices are calculating these things slightly differently because they're pulling biometrics and they're weighing them differently. So, how much weight do they give to this type of HRV? Some devices capture the HRV only within the last hour before you wake up. Other devices, tell you to wake up in the morning and do an HRV recording, and that gives you your score for the day at a snapshot, right? Some people are recommending that. There's a lot of different ways that you can try to look at, recovery metrics. And I think this is where I think actually Biostrap is extremely good because we're pulling that sleep data, but we have all of your HRV data going back. So the algorithms get smarter. So the more data we record, the better it gets. And then we're looking at your sleep score and your HRV score, weighing that with your trends over time, and then generating this recovery score that's personalized. It's very specific to you. And, again, I would say that you also want to trust your own instincts a little bit. So I wouldn't say you have to live 100% by a recovery score, but it could be useful because, just as an example, and I've heard this happen, is that, people say, well, I feel great. I'm going to go and try to set a personal record with my bench press or my deadlift today. But the recovery score was like a go easy. And that go easy score, you have to be pretty low. I think you're under 30% if it says go easy. So what we're basically saying is your body is not in a state of readiness to experience extreme stress, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so you probably is not the day to go for your max deadlift record, right? Because your body is not there. And so people go do that and then wonder why they pull a back muscle, right?
Exactly.
That's why. Because we literally now can quantify that you are not ready to go for your personal record deadlift today because your body's not there. Your nervous system is not in a state of readiness. And so that's an important thing for people to understand. And I think it's important for coaches to start using. I think it's important for individuals to start using this because now we can quantitatively, give people that information on a daily basis.
Yeah. I also think what's the other big takeaway from that is starting to understand and to learn what are the days, the behaviors, the things that you did on the days when that recovery came in, like you are ready to go crush it. So that if you know that next Wednesday is the, CrossFit Open and you need to be on your game so that you can now say, okay, this week I got to dial it in. I got to dial in my sleep, my whatever it is. Whatever all those things are that you will learn over time helps you to be your best so that you can get that recovery score. Because otherwise you wake up CrossFit Morning Open and your recovery sucks. And you're like, what am I going to do? Reschedule? Doesn't always work that way.
That's exactly what Olympic athletes have been doing for decades, is they've been looking at what optimizes their performance. So then you can do that N=1. I did red light therapy. Did it change my nervous system? I went to bed earlier. I took a CBD product. I took this supplement, and you can start to tweak and do that N=1 and find out what gives me that excellent recovery score. And as you said, like maybe you're not going to need to, maybe you don't do all those protocols every day, but if I want to go be in the CrossFit Open, and also too, people didn't realize if I want to even be the best for my podcast, if I want to be the best for my kids, I want to be the best for my test, or I'm, going to do a training, board meeting, I'm presenting, I'm on stage, whatever it is, you can optimize your performance. And that readiness score is not just for physical, it's also mental because it's an HRV metric. So what is your nervous system state of readiness to face and deal with stress? And that stress can be physical or mental. And I think that's the key thing people can start doing. The technology is here right now. You don't need to wait. This is not something coming in the future. You can do this today, and you can start to understand, what is changing your life for the better or for the worse. People are usually shocked when they find out how bad their HRV tanks after even one or two drinks. It's pretty amazing.
Oh yeah.
And people usually get really almost depressed because they're like, I just want a little bit of my alcohol, and it's like their HRV just goes like plummets, So you need to look, so at least you can have that objective data so that you can plan your life better. You can have that N=1 and, you can make your decisions just more informed.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Okay. Well, listen, I want to respect your time. I think you have another call to jump on after this, this recording. So we have a follow-up podcast to this one coming with your chief science officer.
Officer. Chief science
Kevin?
officer. Yeah.
And so I'm recording that next week. So by the time you guys are listening to this is going to be the 1-2 punch. We're going to have one come out first, and Elias goes and leads the charge, and Kevin brings it home. So thank you so much, Elias, for being here today. For the listeners, if you guys want to get yourself a Biostrap, they're now, you can get it at biostrap.com. And there's a couple of really cool accessories that maybe I'll talk with Kevin about as well. One being the armband, and then the other being a shoe pod for activity outside, I guess. I love the activity part. I'm a cyclist, so I love the activity part because it gives me the cadence of my cycling. So it's really great for runners and cyclists. It's a great way because hard to get those metrics off arm sways. Right.
Even if you want really accurate step tracking.
Well, it's interesting because I have an indoor bike, but it it tries to tell me how far I went.
Right.
I didn't get anywhere. But I pedaled my butt off, but I didn't get anywhere. Right. Anyway, I'm looking forward to using it next summer when I can get back outside on a bike. It's a little cold here for biking. Anyway, so thank you so much, Elias. You can go to biostrap.com. You can get 10% off your Biostrap with promo code longevity10. And we'll have the follow-up soon. And maybe we'll get you back someday and dig a little deeper into that whole Biostrap lab project.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Would love to talk more about that. Thank you, Natalie, for the opportunity. We didn't even get there. There's so many exciting things to talk about. So hope to see you again soon. And thank you for all the work you're doing for the biohacking community. I think you really, you have a very sort of egalitarian, positive approach that you bring to the community. So I want to thank you and acknowledge you for that.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Elias.
Okay.
Good to see you. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks so much for joining me on this episode of the Biohacking Superhuman Performance Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, because that's what helps us to be heard and to be seen. If you'd like to connect with me directly, or if you'd like to leave any comments, or if you have any questions about this episode, please reach out to me directly through my website, natnidham.com. And of course, if you're not already a member of the Biohacking Superhuman Performance community on Facebook, that's where you'll find me every day. It's a short application. Just answer a couple of questions and you're in and interfacing with other amazing biohackers. Thanks again, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode.